Great. Okay. Okay. Welcome everyone to the July 20th Maple Broadband Governing Board meeting. We have quorum, so let's get started. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thanks, Shannon. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second, I think from from
Ross.
Mike and Ross. Okay, thank you. All in favor of approving that agenda, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Excellent. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstaining, Leslie Huston abstaining.
Okay. Any abstentions? Thank you, everyone. Ellie also posted at the same time the minutes from the June 15th governing board meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Ross, thank you. A second from someone?
Second, Ashley.
Okay, thanks, Ashley.
Yeah, one item, Steve. I was attending that meeting, but I was here at the office of the regional planning, and Adam was at his house, so he didn't catch me in the attendance.
Okay, thank you. With that friendly amendment is, I'll entertain a motion. I think we've already moved and seconded. So all in favor of those minutes, please raise your hand or say aye. Great. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Onward. Any members of the public would like to offer some comments? This is your opportunity. Okay. If we're clear on that matter, the chair report today, I'm going to defer to the biannual network build status report, which seems to be a much bigger priority. And there's, I think the only good overall news is that Maple Broadband continues to work towards implementing BEAD work, but we're still waiting on approvals on that. So I think that's kind of a status quo item. So having said that, WCBT, I don't know, is that you, Kurt, or do we? I see that Roger also joined.
I'm going to share my screen so we can look at it.
Yes, we're both on.
There we go.
Can you make it a little bit larger, Ellie?
Yep.
Excellent.
There. Is that good?
Yep. Even better. So this is just a kind of intro on this. This is essentially the form that we originally introduced when we first got started. And the information at the top is pretty much just to set the stage for our respective two organizations and how old we are and how long we've been doing this and how many subscribers we have. And down near the bottom, you can kind of see for yourself what how we've continued to build out our respective networks. And I don't know if Bert, if you'd like to speak to anything about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see everybody, and thank you, Steve and Ellie, for having Roger and I on tonight. Again, thanks to the board for all the partnership. You know, as you can see, we've made significant progress together collectively in terms of getting people served with fiber. We're continuing our network evolution. You probably won't see a lot of change in terms of the home passed, as you can see, since the last time we spoke, and a lot of that's because it's all waiting on BEAD, right? So the promise of BEAD continues, right? We're working through that process, but in terms of the main line, in terms of passing and serving those BEAD addresses, we're all waiting to get started, I guess.
Ellie, could you move to the second page? I think that's really very helpful. By helping.
Yeah, I will. I want to talk to the Maple Broadband column on this one quickly, because we did have whatever that is, 175 passings that we added in the first half of 2026. So it's not too many, but it was enough to put us over the threshold of the passings and the mileage that we're already over the passings that we needed to hit our construction grant milestones, and this put us over the mileage. So we'll talk about that more later in the meeting, but that's that, and we do have plans to continue to build in this quarter as well. So second page.
And, I think for us, on the WCVT side, we only, we have probably about 30-ish miles of main line left to construct that will fall under BEAD. And you can see that's concentrated in parts of Lincoln and Starksboro.
Yep. And for us, the situation hasn't changed at all. Our BEAD plans have been the same as they've been all along through a whole bunch of towns. So filling in some of the gaps in Harrisburg and New Haven and even some of Virgins and Leicester and Salisbury and relatively large portions of Middlebury and even Ripton that we're going through as a result of the BEAD middle mile. And then we're planning to put up distribution fiber and serve the households along those passings as well. But I mean, exactly as Kurt said, BEAD remains a promise. And so I think at this point, our best guess is that the majority of the BEAD work for all of us will be done next year in 2027.
With the notable exception of Ripton, which requires a lot more permitting than the balance of our area. Any questions?
This is Roger. I'll add that in Lincoln, as a board, you could hear from some Lincoln customers at some point in time, as Lincoln was the very first area that received fiber through a actual NTIA grant back in 2012. And now we're having to wait on BEAD to finish them up. And it's been that long, a 13-year time frame in between. So we're frustrated that we don't have it done yet. And I think there may be some frustration on part of those living in the area, because they do know that some of their neighbors have had it for 13 years.
Any questions from WCBT or Maple Broadband before we move on? This is just as a reminder, this is your big opportunity. We invite WCBT to attend twice a year, kind of talk about how they're progressing. And so certainly if there's any concerns that you have, this is a great opportunity to raise them. Certainly we're anything you take to us at our other meetings, when we don't have our friends at WCBT in attendance, we'll always carry those forward to WCBT as well. Ross.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, since WCVT handles all our customer service, if you guys could talk a little bit about what you're hearing from Maple Broadband customers in terms of any problems or issues and complaints that they have, and how that compares to the kind of problems and issues that WCBT customers are having. Are they the same? Are they different? Just kind of wondering where we stand there.
I can certainly start, and Roger, feel free to hop in. That's a great question. I think the number one answer we hear from all of our customers collectively is, when am I getting fiber, right? So those are for the unserved, or in our cases, the underserved, some of those customers that are still on really long copper loops up in parts of Lincoln. And some of our customers who, they're still waiting. We all know, right, the underground stuff, the buried drops, right, just takes more time. And, so we're still working through conversions in those areas. That being said, I would say the number one collectively across the board problem that we'll have is, Wi-Fi issues, Wi-Fi and device issues. And if it's on fiber, the nice thing is we can rule that out really quickly, right? With some of the forward-looking customer visibility tools that we have to troubleshoot, right? We know on fiber, if the light levels are good, the ONT is on and powered, and the Wi-Fi router's on, right, we can guarantee the speed to that gateway. So I would say over 90% of the time, right, if there's an issue, it's going to be Wi-Fi related or device related. And I would say that's, that's an educational issue, right? When electricity was invented and people put lights in the house, right? It was a single light bulb that they were using in the central part of their house, right? And the kind of same thing with Wi-Fi, right? The expectation now is it's all over the place, and the customer expectation has moved to the device level. So I would say that's really the number one opportunity we're working through with Maple Broadband customers. On the WCVT side, right, we're still working through those customers that are on copper, and especially when lightning storms come in. We've had a few already this year. We know that, right, that equipment, right, it's plugged into copper lines, and electricity seeks that easy, the shortest path to ground, and oftentimes, right, that stuff comes back through the copper phone lines, and we'll have lots of DSL modems going out the door after electrical storms and etc. So, and then there's just those phantom problems on copper that you never get to the root cause, where on fiber, again, it's super easy. If the light levels are good, ONT's on, right, it's probably inside the home. So it's just on fiber, much more cut and dry troubleshooting. But I would say those are what we're working through on a kind of a technical support side of things. And then on the customer service side, it really is the when question that we get asked the most.
I can add one. This is Roger. I can add one more. It's if you see, and when we look at the trouble reports, there's often no troubles found, and it's just one of those things where our customers may be having an issue, but when they call in, we cannot make it happen again. And that's frustrating for our tech support, as well as frustrating for the customer, but we'll continue to troubleshoot with the customer until we find the issue at hand.
Other questions, comments?
Steve,
Before
it's
we
Adam.
go ahead, Adam.
I have one question. It goes back to the data that Ellie had up in the sheet, and it looked like WCVT had a total of like almost 9,000 passings and had served almost 8,000 of them, but then you also had 2,000 or so underserved people. Are the 2,000 the people that are still on the copper line, or are they the 30 miles that you talked about in Lincoln and Starksboro? Maybe you could put that back up for me, Ellie, so they can
that's what I'm trying to do.
A little
but
context.
I had the wrong screen. Sorry.
So the 2,877.
Yes.
That really goes back to when we started this. There were those that were considered unserved and underserved out of the locations that we had within our areas. Others at the current speed at that time were considered served. But Ellie, and this is where time muddles the issues for me. What did we consider served when we started? Have we?
25.3 was considered to be served. So if you had DSL that the service provider reported at 25.3, you were served. So this was more of a problem for us in other parts of the district where providers were reporting speeds at 25.3 and customers weren't seeing speeds anywhere near 25.3, but we were prohibited from building those areas. But I mean, that should really be thought of as the count of eligible addresses at the time of our construction grant.
Okay, back to the ARPA grant. So most of those people now, then, most of that 2877 have been brought up to speed, it looks like, with the reports from, say, 22 to 26.
Yes.
Yes.
All but the 405 that we have not passed yet that we're waiting on the BEAD funding.
Right.
And
I think
some folks who are lagging in terms of their drops getting done and the actual conversion.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say, is that these numbers are not exact. I mean, these numbers are intentionally apples to apples in terms of the number of homes passed with mainline fiber. Neither of these numbers represents the number of homes connected with fiber. As you guys know, our subscriber count is not 3,790. It would be great if it were, but it is not. And the same for WCVT. They might pass 8,079 homes with fiber, but that doesn't mean that every single one of them has a fiber drop yet. And a number of those, I think there's nearly 1,000 or something like that, are part of BEAD, which 405 are part of the new main line, and the remainder are drops, long drops, expensive drops, whatever, off of existing main line that are BEAD funded. And those customers are waiting until we can get the go-ahead on BEAD.
And herein lies the definitional issue that at the federal government, they say if you pass someone and they're eligible, that they're served, where we as a company, we do not consider someone served until we have the drop in and they're actually getting service from us. And that was the differences that Kurt and Ellie just described.
Yeah, they consider you servable, and they further go on to require that you be able to be served within 10 days from placing an order. So they have all sorts of rules.
Thank you.
Not all of which reflect reality.
Anything else?
Oh,
Anyone?
we'll be at the Addison County Fair in a couple of weeks. So if you're at the fair, stop by the booth. You'll have a table as well as we'll have our Waitsfield and Champlain Valley Telecom booth up.
Starts 2 weeks from tomorrow, Roger.
It's already August.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining our meeting and help us understand your progress. I guess it's you should feel free to move on to the rest of your evening, and we'll move on to the rest of our agenda.
Yeah, thank you so much, and reach out if you need anything. It's good to see everybody.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
That's all.
Hi, guys.
Thank you. Okay. Operations. I kind of mentioned in my quasi chair report that there's not a lot going on with BEAD, but perhaps Ellie can expand on that a little bit for item A under operations. Ellie, is there anything you'd like to add?
I don't think there's really been too much update as it relates to this group since we met last month. So we still have the draft version of the agreement, and so I'm going through that to make sure that I understand all of the obligations on us and how we need to adjust our operations and our service, both construction and ongoing, to be able to accommodate those. And we're still waiting for feedback. The state of Vermont is from the NTIA on the state of Vermont's modified submission to the NTIA. So there's been no feedback on that. And Steve and I are continuing to work primarily with JSI, which is our engineering firm, to wrap up the detailed design and to work on draft notice to bidders for construction services, and then also working on an RFP for construction oversight. So in the coming weeks, we want to be able to get those things out into the world so that we can start to have people bids for services for BEAD, so that when things do come through, we are able to hit the ground running as quickly as we can. So I think the long pole in the tent is we need the grant agreement to be signed with the state of Vermont in order to be able to start the NEPA process. I think that is one thing that we learned, or the VCB learned, in the last couple of weeks. So those things we were trying to work through in parallel. Turns out you can't do that. We have to get our grant agreement signed, and only then are the states allowed to work with sub-grantees on the NEPA process, which frankly does make some sense, because it doesn't make sense to be using federal resources to start working on permitting approval for people who haven't actually signed grant agreements, because anything could fall through. So we still have really no clarity as to when we're actually going to be able to break ground. But as I said, we're working to do everything we can so that when we are able to break ground, we are ready, and we're not sitting around saying, oh, well, this would be a good time to take 2 months and start our procurement for construction services. So there's lots going on, but still don't know when we're going to be able to start.
Any questions of Ellie about BEAD at this point? As long as you have the floor there, Ellie, why don't you tell us about 2026 construction?
Okay, so as we have discussed before, I'll be presenting the financial dashboard in a little bit so we can go over the exact numbers of how much money is left in the different ARPA buckets. But one of the nuances that I figured out somewhat belatedly, and I'm a little bit embarrassed it took me so long to figure this out, is that I've been thinking in my head that we need to spend all of the ARPA money by the end of September. And then it later occurred to me that the town ARPA money, we do not need to spend by the end of September, because we don't need to be reporting on how we spend that money back to the state in order for the agency of administration to go through its multi-month, however long they need to do the closeout period. So on the back of that, that gives us more flexibility to be able to do more with more time. So it takes a little bit of the time pressure off, but not a ton. I mean, we're sitting with less than 6 months before the end of the year. So I have been working with the executive committee for quite some time now on where we would like to be spending the remainder of the construction grant funding, and then from there moving into the town ARPA funding. And so one of the biggest challenges was actually identifying a construction firm that would be able to work with us on what is actually a relatively small scope and relatively short notice, being is that people are really busy with a lot of things right now, trying to, like, everyone, shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people are in the same boat as what we are, trying to finish out ARPA grants. And then just next door to us, the state of New York has its own state grants that are on a similar time frame for completion. So it's been quite hard to find construction resources available, but we were able to find a firm, which it actually came through our sister CUD, NEKCV, and someone that we had working for Mission Broadband a couple of years ago is our construction oversight foreman, is now working in staff for NEKCV, and so he indicates that they provide good quality work, and he's happy with that, so that's a good endorsement of their services. The firm is called ITG, and so because of the fact that we have different amounts of money left, what I got last week, Monday, the executive committee, I brought to them a request for an authorization for up to $300,000, which is within the purchasing threshold of the executive committee to move forward with ITG. So essentially we're going to be building as much as we can for that funding rather than having a scope. And so it's a little bit different than how we have typically worked in the past, where we have a scope and then we come up with a bid and we say this is going to cost X. In this case, we're working the other way too, where we have money we're trying to spend down, and we'll build as much as we can for that pot of money. So today, Steve and I had our kickoff planning call with ITG because we need to work from an approval in principle to an actual signed agreement with unit pricing and a whole bunch of other logistical items. So it was Steve's first time meeting them. I think they brought something like 6 or 7 people to the call, and they are moving really, really quickly. They have 2 people that are coming. I just sent them because it was again last week, Monday, that the executive committee approved the authorization to contract with them. And so on the back of that, I sent them the design prints for what we'd like to have built. And they reviewed those digitally, and they came quite prepared with lots of really good questions. And then 2 of them are coming down here tomorrow to actually do a ride out of these proposed locations so they can actually see in 3D what we're talking about in order to go back and refine things further. And they were really clear. They have materials in stock, the pedestals that this is how you access the fiber for buried construction. We talk about splice cases aerially a lot, but the pedestals are the things that stick up from the ground where you actually access the fiber for buried fiber. So we need something like 56 of those for this work. And I was a little bit worried, can we get 56 pedestals quickly? And they're not worried about that. They're not worried about the number of crews. They don't seem to be worried about anything, which is lovely. But I think Steve and I are, I don't want to say worried, but we really do want to make sure that in this relatively short time frame, we do have time, but there's a lot of details we have to get right. So I'm feeling pretty good about things in general, because we do want to make sure that we spend that money and spend that money productively to get as many people access to fiber as what we possibly can. Anyone, Steve, or anyone from the executive committee wants to add to that?
A general comment is that the funds that we have at our discretion that we can spend now, as Ellie said, we have until the end of September to spend that money. And at least as it stands, there's always a possibility of an extension. I think that would be great, make our lives a lot easier. But assuming that we can't make that assumption, so we're proceeding based on the assumption that we're going to have to do all this work quickly. And so when you look at this magnitude of what we need to do, which is essentially, we know what we want to build, but we have to engage. We have yet to engage the resources to do the work that needs to be done, and we need to get the logistics organized to make sure the materials that are needed are present when they're needed. So there's contract negotiations that need to be done, a lot of kind of preliminary steps that need to be done. And then we have to make sure we have sufficient time when we've done all that upfront work to actually engage the actual construction. I think one of the burning questions that both Ellie and I have is, what's the interval from construction start to construction end, which will truly inform what we can accomplish and what we may not have enough time to accomplish. So I have a feeling we're going to be pretty pleased that they're going to be able to accomplish whatever it is we need to do with our remaining funds, but that's the result only of our first meeting that Ellie and I held today. We will be meeting again with ITG very soon, and at that point, I think they're going to have a lot clearer understanding of what we need to accomplish, and we should be better able to put together a project schedule to help us make informed decisions on what needs to be done and when. Any questions on 2026 construction? Okay. Affordable drop program. Ellie, I asked Alex about this and he said you're going to do this presentation.
Yep. I asked him, yeah, he'd had a conflict and wasn't able to make it. So I asked him to update his slide that he has shared before. And so here it is. So as of July 13th, it's a little bit out of date, but we have 53 households that are qualified and 46 site surveys are complete, 38 contracts signed. And these are the really exciting numbers. We have 20 that not only have the conduit complete, but they have the NID, that's the network interface device, goes on the outside of the house, but that's been installed. And so the final step now is for WCVT to give these customers a call in order to schedule the inside installation and the turn up. So we have 20 more customers that we expect to be coming online in relatively short order. So that's great. Hopefully we can get some of those in this month still so that they can show up in our end of July numbers. So some of Alex's notes down here is that Eustis is expecting to get all of the remaining conduits built in 1 week. They average about 3 addresses per day, so that's pretty efficient, all things considered. And then this is the other thing, is that we talked last month that what we really need to do is open up the aperture, as Alex was saying, and I like that turn of phrase. We need to have more people in the pipeline, because the more people we have that are interested, the more people make it all the way through to being qualified and signing contracts and getting installed. And so so he's doing some activities in relation to that. So he's calling through to the 8 customers who've been qualified and we've done the estimates. They have contracts put in front of them, but they haven't yet signed. And he's also calling through to some others that are pre-qualified. So they'd expressed interest, but they haven't placed a crowd fiber order yet. So they need to do that second bit. And then I think you guys may have seen on Front Porch Forum, but we had put out a post on Front Porch Forum that we are looking for door-to-door canvassers. So Alex did a day of canvassing. It was actually July 3rd, right before July 4th. So he did some canvassing himself to just understand how customers are responding and objection handling. And we have talked about going door-to-door in this group in an executive committee for a really long time, not only in relation to the affordable drop program, but just in general to make people aware of Maple Broadband. And that was actually one of Alex's big takeaways, is that going and knocking on doors, there's a surprising number of people who they had maybe heard of us, but they weren't aware of things that we're all aware of, because we have been talking about them until we're blue in the face, like the fact we have installation fees waived for the rest of the summer. They weren't aware of that, or they weren't aware of the affordable drop program, or they weren't aware of LEAF. And I think the learning from this is that it's one of the truisms of marketing that you need to make people aware of the same offer multiple times, often before they take action. But also, again, people go through the world in different ways. Some of us see things more digitally, some people see things more in print, some more in person. So we did see some really good responses from Alex going door-to-door canvassing. And so we are recruiting for part-time canvassers to go out and pound the pavement and get people into the Maple Broadband pipeline, both for affordable drop program and just in general. So Alex wanted me pleased to ask this group this evening that if you know of anyone through your contacts who might be interested, or even just to take the Front Porch Forum listing, take the job posting on the website, please distribute it through your networks, because same sort of thing. We can have a job posting up there, but if no one sees it, people aren't going to apply. So please, please, please spread the word that we are hiring for this. And I think Chris had his hand up.
I did. I mean, you sort
any
of,
other questions? Yeah.
yeah, sorry, you sort of answered it, but I was wondering, do people fall off on the site survey part of the funnel, or is it like being qualified means you could already have fiber dropped? You just haven't gotten around to setting up the survey yet. Does that make sense? I'm sorry. You sort of already answered this question, but yeah.
Yeah, well, so just to explain what the different fields mean on this, I'll share my screen again so we can go back to it. So qualified means that, so there's two things that's required for the affordable drop program. We need there to be an order in crowd fiber, so we know what we're actually going and building. And then we need to make sure that people meet the program rules. And the program rules were designed to be very flexible, but the value of the house that we're connecting it has to be under $1 million. And the household income needs to be under $750,000. And if the house is over $1 million and you're a renter, that's also allowed. But the rules of the grant required us to put some constraints. So basically, what this is with the exception of people who are on the wealthier side of the spectrum, we just need them to have entered an application, and we need to have them have entered an order in crowd fiber. That's what that number is. And then the site survey is complete is on the back of that. Eustace goes out to check out the site and figure out exactly. Well, so there's been there's a site design which has been done either by WCVT or by JSI, which is how they think that the drop should be connected and what portion is buried. But obviously, we want to go out with the customer and make sure that if we're planning to dig up their lawn, that they're in agreement with the route that we plan to dig up their lawn. So essentially, this is a field visit to make sure that we know exactly what we're building. And then the next step is to produce a contract, which the customer has to sign, because the grant program required us to have a minimum of 6 months for everyone getting funding under this. And then as a matter of policy, we want there to be longer commitments if we're spending more money. If we're spending $15,000 to connect a house that's really far from the road, people should have to commit to service for a longer period than if it's a 40-foot buried drop. So I think this is where people might drop off, because if you've gotten this far, if you put a contract in front of you and it says, well, you need to commit to service for 12 months, some people might say, oh, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't know, because this isn't here, what sort of drop off there is here. Anecdotally, I don't think it's been very high, because he hasn't mentioned anything about it being high or people being hesitant to sign contracts. It's more just takes a little bit of time. And then once the contracts are signed, that then goes into the construction queue.
One consideration on the affordable drop program is the same consideration we discussed regarding the ARPA-funded construction that we're trying to get all accomplished in the next couple of months, and that is that this is all funded through a grant provided. It's another ARPA grant. It's over $1 million, and we have until, from my perspective, the contractor Eustace has about 30 days from when we first engage them to complete their work, which means that we basically we have to stop engaging Eustace at the end of August. That way once that means that they'll have 30 days to finish their obligations so that we can spend that money before the end of that ARPA deadline. Questions about LEAF or Nonprofit Connect or the Affordable Drop Program?
I was just wondering if we actually do have any nonprofits who have signed up. And I know we've discussed extending that to municipalities, and if there's been any connections with towns' interest or contracts signed.
So great question. I think that's next on the agenda. So as of the end of last month, we had 13 people signed up for Leaf. And then for Nonprofit Connect, we have, last I looked, we had 4 nonprofits that had filled out the form and had been accepted. And one of those is Cornwall's Fire Department, and we're actively working with them. They have 2 separate locations. The town of Cornwall itself, municipal office, needs to fill out the form. Justin, if you're there, and then we can get that hooked up. And the city of Virgins also filled out a form, and Shannon's been working with them. And the only nonprofit that was actually receiving these benefits as of the end of June is one of our oldest customers, actually, which is Shard Villa in Salisbury. It's a level 3 elder care facility. So it is, yeah, it's moving. We're spreading the word, and we will continue to do so. One other thing, because we're now getting into marketing, so some of these lines are a little bit blurry, but one of the things that we talked about, I think it was this meeting a month ago, or maybe it was executive committee, was again just talking about using different approaches, because we've done a lot of direct to consumer marketing around these programs. We've talked about reaching out to other entities that themselves have trusted relationships with households or maybe small businesses. And I'll turn over to Ashley in a little bit, and I can stop talking. But last I spoke with London Middlebury, they were in fact working on that campaign, because it's the sort of thing where you want to put some thought into it before you just start going and willy-nilly contacting organizations without having a game plan together. So working on it. That's my update.
Just
Steve,
take
can we
the
move into
segue from the, yeah.
Yeah. Good. Is it okay with you, Steve, if Ashley moves into the marketing update?
Sounds about right. Yeah, I was pretty tickled about the it's kind of all grouped together, nonprofit and municipality to Zapata's comment. And basically, I think it's a matter of reaching out to the right resources, to right towns. And I think it's a pretty good deal we're offering to them. And I think the take rate, I'm very hopeful on that, but we want to respect the process to make sure that when we do that, when we reach out to those potential customers, we're ready to present what we need to present.
Yeah. And I think on the municipal side, many of them we're either already talking to, or we already have as customers. There's only, or like the town of Shoreham, for example, they're getting free service in exchange for the hub site, at least. So it's some of the remaining towns, it really does make sense to engage with delegates who's a town representative, rather than someone cold calling the town and saying, hey town, why don't you sign up for this? So working on that too.
Yeah, and the best example that kind of relates directly to Zapata's comment is that we did receive a direct query from Ripton about this for the Municipal Connect program, and they are not yet a Maple Broadband customer. I say yet because hopefully they will be when we get around to extending service to them. So I informed them of this program with a recognition that at the rate we're going with some permitting challenges plus generally construction challenges, it's possible that we may not be doing a lot up in Ripton for a couple of years yet. But we're seeing action, we're seeing interest on the part of potential subscribers, so that's always good news. No other questions on marketing?
I have to give my marketing update if that's okay.
Please.
Okay. So just following up on what Ellie was saying, so the B2B2C effort, we've been developing those outreach lists and really recognizing that different organizations have different touch points that are strong. So some are really strong on social media. Some have a lot of great face-to-face contact with either their clients or their customers. Others might be really great with email outreach. So we've been developing, we have the list of for-profits and nonprofits and what their followers look like versus what their perceived presence is in the community, and developing sales enablement tools and outreach materials to reach out to those folks with and provide them with to help spread our word. So that might be something from having like the National Bank of Middlebury share a post on social because they have a great social following in the Addison County community, to having materials that United Way can share with their clients or with their nonprofit organizations that they're connected with. So that bundle is getting ready for Ellie's eyes. And then, as she said, it definitely takes a lot more time than we would want to find all the relevant email addresses or the accounts. And I feel like after doing all of this, we should just, Maple Broadband should sell this database of all the information of all of the influencing organizations in the county, because we've mined all the information around those folks. So that's an under the surface effort that's definitely happening. More visibly, we're gearing up for field day, so we'll be running social promotion for a family season pass of field days, or family pack of season passes for field days. And that's to really drum up some social following, because that is a really weak area for Maple Broadband. Definitely, we put it as a lower priority. And so it's a nice way to just get folks who are, field days is such a unique situation for Addison County because it really captures everyone in our geographical territory and this community. So in addition to that, we're also looking to do a bigger booth giveaway this year. So in the past, if people have signed up on just like little raffle tickets, we've given away money for Virgins Green for folks to spend at local Virgins businesses. We want to be a little bit more mainstream this year. So we're looking to give away, we're raffling off a big TV is the plan. But it's going to be a little bit more involved for folks who are entering in the raffle. So we want them to actively look up their address so that they get into Crowd Fiber. And then if they are part of our active service area or planned service area, then they get entered into the raffle. All that being said, I don't think that we can execute that giveaway, that sweepstakes, very well if we don't have folks at manning our booth. And so here I am again with a volunteer request. I have a sign up sheet, a Google spreadsheet that I'd love to drop into the chat if that's okay with you, Steve. And it's just like 4-hour time slots, August 4th through 8th. It would be really great if folks might be able to find a small window to man the booth. And we've gotten approval from Ellie that Maple Broadband will cover your entry for that day that you volunteer if you volunteer. So I think that's a really generous offer from Maple Broadband, but no one can promote this as well as we can. And I know the WCBT folks are gone now, I hope, but they're great. And it's wonderful that we share the booth. And they still wear the WCBT shirts, and we want folks who are there with Maple Broadband name tags. And the swag this year is fly swatters, which I feel like are going to be really popular. So even if it's just to get your own fly swatter and chat with your neighbors for a few hours, we'd love to have you there. So I'm just gonna put. So Steve, do I have your thumbs up to put the link in the chat? Is that okay?
You do.
Okay, awesome. If you just put your name, your email, and your phone number in there, this is just for internal use. And we'd love to fill up as many slots as possible. Otherwise, I think you'll see an ad in the Addison Independent in the upcoming Profiles and Community section, which is just really great exposure for organizations and businesses in the community to say we support the community. And this is one of the first times that we're really going to publicly be putting the executive committee's face out there, and then the names of delegates as well. So Maple Broadband truly is built by this community. We live in this community, and we want to reinforce that. So maybe by the edition, the first last week of July, and then cut out that section and put it on your wall. You should be proud that you're helping build Maple Broadband. I think that's everything that I need to cover in the interest of time. Ellie, am I missing anything?
I think you hit all the high points.
So
Awesome.
Ashley, the fly swatters, those are being given away at field days?
Yeah, that's the Maple Broadband swag this year.
All right, all I can say is next year you need to make fans. Because when it is hotter than you know what, having a fan is like the personal item that everybody wants.
That's so true. And we did actually think about that after last year's. But then this year we were like, well, what will they keep in the home all year and just be reminded of Maple Broadband? But fans are great. And in the interim, we still have coloring books about internet safety for kids. So just give those to the people. They can fan themselves with that. But I'll write that down for next year, Zapata.
I wanted to back up on marketing. One other item, just to be very clear, Ellie had expressed solicited some volunteers or some people to do canvassing. That's not volunteer work. That's paid work. We're going to pay someone to do that. So if that affects your thinking on who you might want to suggest to do it, that's certainly a consideration. And I don't think we're looking for a full-time person. I think what I saw was maybe half-time, like 20 hours a week kind of thing, Ellie.
Yeah, I'm getting the job listing and I'm gonna put that in the chat as well.
I was also going to echo, thanks for reminding us of that, Steve. I was going to echo that too, because I've had a lot of conversations with folks who wish that it was 10 hours instead of 20 hours, but it is really generous at $35 an hour with performance bonuses. And Ellie, I think we're hoping someone can do it through the end of the summer. And a lot of the conversations I've anecdotally been having are folks who work in the school system are like, oh, maybe I can see if this can work before I go back to school. So if you have folks that might not need to do as much prep before the school year, this could be a really good role for them.
Yep.
Okay. Moving right along. Sounds like we see, Rich has his hand up. Rich.
Yeah, regarding the canvassers, how many do you intend to hire and how many doors do you expect them to knock on per day?
I don't know that we have specific performance targets that we're aiming for them. I think it's in here. Alex had this somewhere.
I think it'd be good to have some kind of estimate so you don't overhire.
Yeah, Alex did have them. It's just not in the job posting, and I don't have it immediately to mind. I think it also, because I think he did something like 75 in a day, but he was walking in Virgins, and if you're driving in a rural area, you're going to get probably half of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wasn't thinking of advertising just as a, sort of. Well, I can't, only word I can say is engineer because I'm an engineer, but engineering it. Sorry.
Thanks for the thoughts, as always. Okay, let's move on with no other hands up in the air. So, the dashboard. Are you going to bring that up, Ellie, and we can ask Lynn to talk to it, or how are we going to do this?
I think I usually talk about the dashboard. Lynn can give an update of finance committee and other finance activities. Okay, so here's the dashboard. Let me know if I need to make this bigger. It's sitting at 140%, so it's pretty big in my laptop. So this is where we are with the balance of the grant funds that we have. So, and then I put down here at the bottom so that we can easily see what is the total ARPA balance remaining. So as of the end of June, we had just over $800,000 in the ARPA total, and that's across these 4 different categories. So we have pre-construction, is 82,000 left. The construction grant, 135. The town ARPA is about 290, and the town ARPA match is 297. So the total that we need to spend by the end of September is the 432. Well, plus the 82, but we will not have any problem spending the pre-construction. So in the construction work we were mentioning earlier, this is the number, the 432,000. And then this other 290,000 we have until the end of December to spend that money because it comes from the towns. We don't need to provide any further closeout reporting in relation to that. And I suppose this is as good a time as any to talk about this construction grant. As you can see, this is not the first time we've been in this situation, but we've spent more money that we've charged to the construction grant than what we've actually received in cash. We have another $389,458.40 that's remaining for us to draw down against that grant. So we have completed all of the obligations that we need to for that grant, and the VCBB's inspection firm completed their work week before last, and they sent us a punch list of things that they reckon we need to repair. And so we have reviewed that. We have some questions and some comments on that, and we're trying to set up a meeting with them to go over it. But I had my monthly meeting with VCBB this morning, and they're not terribly concerned about any of the items in that list. So that's one of the other items that I'm working through, is completing the final reports and working through that punch list in order for us to be able to invoice for this nearly $400,000 under this grant, to have that cash in our bank now. So that's what's happening there. Then the affordable drop program, we received the $224,446 in the month of June. So we're now actually in the black on this grant. So as of the end of June, we'd only spent about $17,000, which is mostly on legal work and marketing work and program management and the income verifications under LEAF, which is also this grant is paying for the first year of that, because part of the grant also requires explicitly a low income outreach. So this number is going to start to go up when we get our use to spills in. But for right now, as of the end of June, we're sitting at $200,000 more received than what we'd spent. And then this is the federal match for the BEAD program. So this shows that we've charged about $91,000 in services in preparation for BEAD. So that's where we are from a grant cash perspective. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I'm going to move on to operations. This one's tiny, so I will make it bigger. You see that now? Okay. So our total revenue year through the end of June, year to date, is just over 400,000, and that's up almost 85,000 month over month. So that's looking about as what we expect. And there was no change in the mileage with service over the from between May and June. We had 17 new installations in June, which is great. That was up from the 12 that we had the previous month. And we were at 717 active subscribers at the end of the month, and our take rate is nearly 19%, which is great. I think the one thing I did want to note here is I had projected more active subscribers. I had projected, when I did the updated business model earlier in the year, I had projected us being about a month or two ahead of where we actually are in terms of the affordable drop program. I was, I guess, a little bit overly optimistic about how long it would actually take from getting people in the pipeline to getting all the paperwork done and having the installations done and ready to turn them into active service. So that's why. But I think from this month, we're going to start to see, as we saw earlier, the 20 people that as of now are ready to be installed. Hopefully we get a lot of them this month. And then our customer count, subscriber count, ticks up more than what has been the trend of new aerial subscriptions. And yeah, so this is our product mix. Not really too much change month over month. Any questions on operations? Okay, and then the final thing is we are now in July, which means that we are through the first half of the year. So I went through and did the budget to actual updates. So we can have a look at that one quickly. So that is not right. I apologize. I must have had a restart and I'm sharing the wrong version. So maybe Lynn, can you give an update on other happenings in finance while I get the version up there where it actually has the budget to actual? And hopefully it's saved. I don't have to redo it.
Okay, so updates from the Finance Committee. We have met with the Finance Committee 2 or 3 times, I guess maybe 2 times since June. It's only July. And the main topic with the Finance Committee was going through the RFP process for auditing services. We received 3 bids. We ended up interviewing 2 firms. Both the firms were fantastic. we, the finance committee saw the three proposals. Ellie and I and Darlene interviewed the two firms that we thought were outstanding. And we brought our feedback back to the executive, or back to the finance committee. And they asked us to reach out, for referrals. We went through that process. And then we went back to the executive committee with a recommendation based on our discussions with the finance committee and our interviewing of the two firms. And again, both firms were outstanding. One was Baker Tilly, which is it international? Maybe, well, I know it's a international firm. And Barry Dunn, which is a regional firm. The recommendation we made to the executive committee, which was voted on and supported, was to work with Barry Dunn, the regional firm, and they also have experience with CUDs. Darlene, Ellie, and I are all excited about working with this firm and the team of people we interviewed. So that's kind of a big update. And they will start their work as soon as the contract's signed. They'll be meeting with our previous auditor to get reports, trial balance, all that kind of stuff. So the transition work. And then they'll start their work with all of us about our systems, and they'll start testing transactions in November and December. So a lot of work will be done ahead of the end of this year, which is exciting. Won't all be piled up in February like it has been the previous few years that I've been involved for 3 audits. So anyway, we have a fabulous finance committee, really great people who volunteer their time to talk with us and reflect with us. And so I think that's it. Ellie, can you think of anything else?
Nope, I think those are the updates, and I have rediscovered my dashboard, so
All right.
I'm glad
Very
it
good.
did not get deleted in a restart or a Windows update. So here we are, and I promise I didn't scramble and fill this in the last 5 minutes. These are real numbers. So here's our actuals for Q2. So I think just a couple things to call your attention to. We decided to waive installation fees about a month into the second quarter. And then in the third quarter as well, we're going to be waiving that through the end of September. So this budget number we know is going to be off because we intentionally made a promotional decision to be discounting those or to be waiving those. So that's one budget number that's going to be way off. There's a lot fewer people signed up for LEAF than what we budgeted for, which is fine. Well, it's not fine. I mean, we'd like to have more people in there, but we're under budget as it relates to that. But again, if you know of anyone that you think could qualify and is in our active service territory, we would love to know about it. And under the grant revenue, this should still be accurate. We need to draw down the remainder of that. That should come in at some point this year. This is the amount from our federal grant match, which we will be able to invoice and receive when we sign our BEAD grant agreement, which, again, my understanding is that needs to happen this year under the time frame that the VCB is under from NIST. And the affordable long drop, we budgeted drawing down the entire thing this year. That's no longer going to be accurate because at the current run rate, we're not going to be able to get 168 drops done by the end of September. So as Steve said, that one may well be extended, but regardless, this number is not going to be correct in terms of budgetary number. And then the other budgetary number that is definitely not going to be right is the BEAD amount. And we talked about this. I mentioned this month after month last year that the only thing I know about the BEAD budget is that it's wrong. And, again, I had no idea what the milestones might look like. I had no idea when we'd be getting going. So this number is definitely not accurate. So just, we're only halfway through the year, but I just want to call your attention to some revenue numbers specifically on the grant sides that we know are not correct. And then in terms of our director variable operating costs, these are pretty much all as you can see the percentages over here. Sorry, that's hard to have a big thing and then also see what you're looking at. So the bank service fees, merchant credit card fees, and operator fees are all essentially as projected. The operator fees are actually a little bit less, which I think is because our subscribers are a little bit less than what was projected. So because those fees as a percent of the average revenue per user are pretty standard. Advertising and promotion, we did increase that a lot between the first quarter and the second quarter. We're going to continue to increase that with the affordable drop program and with the door-to-door canvassing and with other activities. So I think there's a reason that we budgeted so much money last year for marketing to raise awareness of Maple Broadband. And I'm not saying we're going to spend every dollar, we might, but that spend is intentional to help us drive more revenue in the longer term. Yeah. And then let's see. What else do I want to call your attention to?
So Ellie, before you move on,
yeah.
You mentioned going back up to those last line items for advertising. We can spend ARPA funds on advertising and marketing?
We can spend pre-construction funds on advertising and promotion, yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to be, it's actually funny, we budgeted $25,000 for auditing expense for this year, and I think we're going to be right on budget. This was our spend for last year's audit, and then there's an onboarding fee from the new auditor, so we're going to be very close to the budgeted amount for audit services. And the legal expense, this was mostly related to getting the long drop up and running, if memory serves. And accounting advisor services was related to the audits. And yeah, we got our repairs and maintenance bill from WCVT. So this is Waitsfield performs our network maintenance and repairs for us, and they bill us quarterly for the service. And so again, this budget to actual is on a cash basis. So it's actually running about a quarter behind of what it would look like on an accrual basis. So we budgeted $25,000 for the year. We somehow wound up with a service credit in the first quarter, which, geez, I wish that maintenance actually paid us money, but it doesn't. But this, and again, it's highly variable. I mean, if there's a bad storm or a truck fire or something, we can easily wind up with a higher number. So for now, we might be under budget just because of the fact that it is, we paid last year, and so somehow we wound up not having to actually outlay on a cash basis in the first quarter. So that's that on the repairs side. And yeah, I don't think there's too much else there. And then as we get down to our capital spend, this is just showing what happened on a cash movement basis. But I think the previous tab where I was showing how much money is left in the grants is probably a better view to see what's going on, because this doesn't really tell you how much of this expenditure is for BEAD and for other things. So like this, for example, the $72,000 we spent on detailed network design and engineering, most of that is BEAD related, but not all of it. Some of that, for example, is doing the drop design for existing in-service areas so that WCVT doesn't need to go out and scout locations before we can get the customer turned up. And then a lot of these materials as well. Some of these are in relation to, I'm not going to call them ARPA funded. Some of it's ARPA funded, some of it is just non-BEAD funded construction that's planned, and then some of that is BEAD materials. But again, it's all cash basis, and so it's kind of hard to tell by looking at it this way what program this is actually going to. But I think just one other thing to draw your attention to is we had projected for the year an operating profit of just over $23,000, which when you look at this out of $500,000 is essentially break even. I mean, this could go either way. And after the first 2 quarters, we're sitting at about $35,000 operating profit right now. So, but we do have some expenses that we haven't yet hit. So the reason I'm just calling your attention to this is that in terms of being a business which can make sure that it pays its operating expenses every single month, this is really important, that we should all be aiming towards operating break even. And I think the comment above about marketing and advertising is important because it is important to be spending on marketing and advertising. But at the same time, also, we're close enough to break even that if we had to tighten our belts in some ways, there are some things that we could cut out of this. I mean, there's a lot of what's happening in here. For example, some of the legal expenditures, that's in relation to new grant programs. Advertising is in relation to new grant programs and getting new subscribers on. So, again, like it all shows up on the profit and loss under your operating profit, which is correct. But if you take out the one-time expenses for grants, just anecdotally, I think we're doing really quite well, all things considered, in terms of keeping our actual overheads reasonable in relation to our subscriber revenues and our ability to pay our bills when we get out of the world that we're in now, which is having grants to be able to fund construction and overheads. So I think that's really important because ultimately we've talked about this for a long time, that we're maturing from an organization that was primarily grant funded and was busy building infrastructure to one where in 5 years' time, we're not going to be having so many new network builds, and we need to make sure that we can continue to pay the bills. So the numbers are stacking up really well in relation to that. That is my final editorial comment about our financial position. Happy to take any questions, and Lynn can as well.
Questions for Ellie or Lynn? Side comment from the perspective of watching Ellie and Lynn talk about the Finance Committee. It is evident that we are very, very lucky to have a group of folks that are based here in Madison County who are supporting our effort and offering their wealth of experience to contribute to the work that we're doing. Without exception, it seems like Lynn has, every meeting we've held, she's quick to point out how lucky we are. And we're really, really lucky to have that Finance Committee to kind of contribute to the effort we're engaged in. And for example, a decision on the new auditing firm basically had to pass through that Finance Committee before it was presented to the Executive Committee. So basically, we drew upon the wisdom of that Finance Committee and religiously followed the guidance that they provided. I think I saw a hand up.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. So now that we've got paying customers, starting to see that our credit card fees are adding up, and it seems to me that we could pretty low cost easily reduce that simply through our marketing and our newsletter, just explaining to people, what we're doing. We're counting every penny. We're trying to provide best service at the lowest cost. And if they could pay by check rather than credit card voluntarily, we could just reduce that and stop paying so many fees out to the credit card companies. And that could be something I think we should consider.
I would have to double check the numbers on that because we pay pretty substantial fees for the check processing through the lockbox. I'm just pulling this up again because I have them side by side here. I don't know off the top of my head how many customers pay with check versus card, but I imagine most of them pay with credit cards. But as you can see here, we have $1,700 in bank service fees, and this is specifically related to the lockbox processing. It's like we pay all of, I think, $25 a month from the National Bank of Middlebury, and that's further down on the P&L. This is the direct cost related to the check processing, and then this is the credit card fees. So we could ask Waitsfield how many pay with each one so that we can figure out what is our monthly cost per customer for each one. But it's because it is a little bit unintuitive. Like, I mean, you'd think if you get a check yourself, you take it to the bank, it costs you nothing, but we have to deal with someone receiving it at the bank, and for whatever reason, the fees are unhappily high. But I mean, you're right, Ross. Like, we should probably just double check because it would be good to know one way or the other. Ashley's got a hand up.
Do you wonder, we take ACH transfer though, right? They can put their, in Smart Hub, they can put their bank account. And do we pay a substantial processing fee for that, or what does that look like?
I am
Because I
not
think
sure. Yeah.
because that could benefit, like if we, being a customer of National Bank of Middlebury, Maple Broadband has that ability to ask and see how it can support the business. And bill pay is very advantageous to the bank too. If folks are putting money into their checking accounts, savings accounts, and then paying out rather than using credit cards, but debiting their accounts, it's very advantageous to the bank as well. So maybe I'm happy to take on that, initiate an exploratory conversation. I don't even have to mention Maple Broadband, but I wonder if that's a good way to also then see how we can cross promote, and it can be part of a bigger campaign of, credit card fees are getting expensive. You should pay all of your utilities through bill pay. And that's very get the bank to also promote that everyone should be using more bill pay and ACH transfer. And we're just kind of one of the ones that's bundled into that, but we get to utilize their reach.
Yep, that's a great point. And I mean, I think just as a general consumer education thing, it could be quite interesting to have the newsletter up on social media. Here's the average cost that it costs us, just as an exemplar, to process these different kinds of payments. People could think about if they're giving to charities or whatnot. And again, like, different people will charge different amounts, but like we're all aware the credit card processing costs a couple percent, and then check processing will be different if you're mailing it to your local place that's going depositing it itself versus a larger company like what we're doing. But I think it could be just interesting for customers in general. And then the other thing as well, speaking of the National Bank of Middlebury, is every single time I speak to them, they give me a lecture about the lack of security of physical checks. There's apparently all sorts of problem with mail getting intercepted. And I mean, as a matter of fact, we had a check fraud that occurred some time ago. And then as a result of that, we've had to implement more security measures on our bank, which is, it is what it is, but it's a real thing that's happening now. So that's could be just another consumer education of all the different ways you could pay your vendors. Here they are ranked by security. So I think that's a great idea, Ashley. Let's have a look at that, because I can work with Waitsfield to figure out, and Darlene to figure what's the average cost to us for these different things, and then we could do some consumer education. So great suggestion, both of you guys. Thank you.
Any other financial matters you'd like to discuss? Because we're running out of agenda here, so this is your opportunity to shoot the breeze about anything that's on your mind. Ellie.
I could talk about finance all day long. I have one other thing I want to call everyone's attention to in this forum, because I've spoken about it in executive committee, which is that we're getting to that time of year when we start to look at next year's annual budget. So if you guys remember, the statute requires us by the end of the month of October to distribute to our member towns our draft budget for next year, and our draft annual reports, and our draft pro forma, which is our projection of actual revenue and expenditures through the end of this year. So that activity is going to be ramping up in my world from late August and then into September with Finance Committee and Executive Committee to get it ready for you guys in October. So while the governing board takes the month of August off from having a meeting, I will be busy starting to think about our budget for next year. So just reminding everyone, as we get into the fall, we will be devoting more time in these meetings, definitely from October, but potentially from September as well, to be talking about budget projections and planning for next year.
Yeah, remember, it seems like it was about a year ago that we talked about the fact that we didn't know if we were going to get BEAD or not, and we had to kind of look at a couple different scenarios that we'd have to address depending on whether or not BEAD happened. Here we are. We think BEAD aren't coming our way, but we still have uncertainty about that, I imagine. Is that something that's going to be reflected in your planning at this point until we get some more certainty around that?
Well, we have a lot more certainty than what we did before. So, I mean, I think last year we were the provisional awardee, and we're still the provisional awardee. I'm sincerely hoping by the time we have our budgets distributed in October, we actually have our signed BEAD grant, so we have more certainty around that. And the other thing is, even the draft grant agreement has milestones that are performance-based, and so we can project forward based on when we're expected to complete the engineering design and when we're expected to complete this, that, and the other milestone that's in there, when we would actually be able to get those disbursements. So it will be, though, I think the one thing which is still a variable is when we're going to be able to break ground and how many of the construction related milestones we're going to be able to hit next year. But by the time, I mean, October is still July, August. I mean, that's 2.5 months away before we have a serious draft. So hopefully there's more certainty in the next 2.5 months, but I feel like I say that every month. So we'll see. Eventually we're going to have to get certainty. This isn't Groundhog Day.
Yeah,
This is
it
BEAD.
has to happen. Yeah, I guess at some point we'll look at each other and say, why are we in October and nothing's happened yet? And I guess at that point, maybe we'll have to discuss the plan B, but I'm with you. I think the clock is ticking. I swear every day I think we're going to get a little bit more certainty, but I don't know. Okay, all right. So as Ellie pointed out, we are not meeting. We skip a meeting in August. So those of you who have been deferring your vacation plans, you cannot take vacation in August without our complaining about it. We still have the same ongoing challenge related to developing a couple delegates. I think we're pretty pleased with the attendance today. It's a good example of what we were hoping to accomplish by moving our governing board meetings to the third Monday in the month. So that's the good news. Is there anything else that any of you would like to discuss at this point before we adjourn? Yeah. All right. Would someone volunteer to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Enjoy your evening and talk to you in a couple months.
All right.